this is your first time, just so you have all the details and you're clear-minded about Monday night, we're asking you to go to your local precinct caucus location by 6:30. It's important to get there. They often will close at different precincts, it's different, but they will close the doors by 7 p.m. So if you get there late, they may not let you in. So be there in plenty of time. There is a whole check-in process. Make sure you bring a valid Iowa driver's license, or if you don't have a valid Iowa driver's license, you can bring an alternative form of ID along with proof of residency, like a bill or a lease or something like that. So if you bring two things, it can substitute for a valid Iowa driver's license. When you get into the caucus, there's usually about a 30-minute program. You'll hear a speaker on behalf of each presidential candidate, and then at the end they'll hand out paper ballots. And so when we're asking you, will you caucus for Vivek Ramaswamy, we're asking you, when you receive that paper ballot, circle Vivek Ramaswamy's name. How many of you already know how to draw circles? You are going to ace this. It's going to be so basic and easy. Now, that's a small ask, I would think, and I hope you agree with me. 30 minutes to caucus and circling Vivek Ramaswamy's name. A small ask to save our country. Wouldn't you agree? Yes. Now, a little more getting to know each other. Who all came tonight already committed to caucus for Vivek Ramaswamy? Amazing. What's your name, sir? Brent. Everyone? Be like Brent. And how many of you came undecided? And you're here to learn more and investigate. Awesome. My challenge to you, if you're undecided, Vivek will do Q&A and he'll dialogue with you. So whatever you need to do to get from undecided to yes, I'm all in. And now's the time to make that decision because we have 4 days to go. So thank you for being here to get all the information you need to finalize who you're going to caucus for. But whatever it's going to take, from undecided to yes, I'm all in. Ask those questions. Ask those hard questions. Vivek knows that he's going to sit across the table from world leaders to speak truth. He's going to have to answer some hard questions from voters. So whatever it's going to take, from undecided to yes, I'm all in. Now, say it with me on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Yes, I'm all in. Ask those hard questions. So do I have your commitment to engage and ask Vivek some hard questions if you came tonight undecided? Love it. Thank you again, each one of you. Those of you who are already in to save our country, and those of you who are here to learn more. We are honored that you took your evening to spend with us and to share with you why Vivek Ramaswamy is the man to save our country. I would like to welcome a special guest. Please join me in welcoming Congressman Steve King.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Esther, and it's really a lot of fun to be on the road with Vivek doing stop after stop. The man has unlimited energy, and I get accused of that from time to time, but he's setting a pace that keeps up and passes, but over I think. But he's going to be up close to 400 stops in Iowa. The record is right now 385 by Rick Santorum, and you know he won this Iowa caucus in 2012. And Iowans honor, it isn't just hard work though. We honor hard work, we respect those that have discipline. Nothing good happens without discipline, and nothing good happens without real work. You got to do smart, hard work, but he's also right on the issues. He isn't just out here just running the laps and thinking there's going to be a gimme on this. He's right on the issues, and you know where I've been on the issues for all of my political life. And I look down through things and I say, okay, I want to have a full spectrum conservative constitutionalist. Somebody that's a social conservative and a fiscal conservative, somebody that wants to shrink the size of government. I've never met anybody that will shrink government like Vivek Ramaswamy. I mean, he just says, my first day I'll go in there and we'll start this out, and he says every even number on a Social Security number, if the federal employee, we're going to lay them off. And I go, well, I'd take the odd ones myself, because, but there's a few odd ones that have even numbers too. But to strip government like that, and to wipe out the Department of Education, for example, which we don't need. And that money comes back into the budget. We're hitting now. When I went to Congress, there was $6 billion in $6 trillion, trillion with a T, dollars in national debt. And my staff ran the records on it, said if they'd followed 7 bills that I brought, we'd have paid off the national debt in that period of time. But they didn't. And now that $6 trillion is now $34 trillion. And we've got to do something bold. We need a bold president, a bold leader that will step in there. And also the thing about Vivek is that he's creative. I mean, he comes up with ideas that maybe nobody ever thought of before. He's not out there just taking ideas, he's generating them. And I know a little bit about that too. So when we sat down and began to talk through these things, I watched how quick a study he is. And when we got to the CO2 pipeline piece of that, I've been on that thing for a year. It's been kind of my life trying to kill off this effort to condemn our private property for that boondoggle of CO2 that would suck all of the CO2 that's emitted into the atmosphere. It goes back in the corn crop. The next year, by the way, they take it out, put it in a pipeline, compress it, and then send it up to North Dakota. And then we get to reach in our pockets and pay the debt. It's Chinese investment money in that, too. But when I laid this out to Vivek, 45 minutes in the bus is bouncing around, there's background noise and all. And when I got done with all of that, he had this thing nailed, stone cold. And then, I need to get you more information. So I went back and I kept firing more and more information to Vivek. He just sucked it all in and sorted it out so that it all makes clear sense. And when you hear him talk, you'll know it makes clear sense. But he has a plan for every aspect of this. And another would be the border. You've watched what's happened on the border, and you know that I built a wall on the floor of the House of Representatives in 2006 to show them how easy it was. And because Paul Ryan is saying, it's too hard to build that wall. The desert's hot. We'll take some of that this week, won't we? And the desert's hot, and it's dry, and there's rock, and there's mountains, and the river, and all that, and toads have to hop over the border, and you got to get the fence out of the way for these desert toads. And no, you don't. It's real simple. Build the wall, and build all the wall. Well, Vivek will finish the wall, and he'll put our military on the border to protect our border, and he'll put an end to the illegal immigration. And then, I don't hear anybody else saying this. Illegal aliens, if you're not lawfully present in the United States of America, then you have to go home. Just that simple. And that does a number of things. One is that it restores a respect for the rule of law. And that was a tragedy when they opened the borders up, and we saw less border security from, I'll go back to, after Eisenhower, it got to be less and less each president until we got to Trump. And then, of course, he got blocked on the wall. But Vivek, he says this, everyone who's unlawfully present has to leave America, and we'll load them up to do that. Now, they can go back to their home country, and they can apply legally to come back in. The law says if you're illegally here caught in America and you have a 10-year bar before you can come back and apply back into the United States of America. Okay, that's fair. But if they go home on their own, it's a 5-year bar or nothing, because we aren't checking their ID when they leave. Then we don't have a record that they're here. So, but he would do that. He would secure the border with the military forces, both the Canadian and the southern border. And of all the drugs that are coming in, the drug cartels that are controlling that border, and the death that comes from that, 100,000 young people die to drug overdoses in this country every year. About 70,000 of them are because of the illegal drugs that are being smuggled from China to Mexico, turned into fentanyl and brought into the United States. And so with those reasons, and on top of that, the number one principle that is motivating me is to defend against this CO2 pipeline boondoggle and the unconstitutional takings of our private property. And when I look at what happened, the founding fathers dumped the tea into the bay in Boston, and we fought a war over that. Well, we've got to do a battle here. Let it not be bloody. Let it be bloodless. But let's welcome the next President of the United States, Vivek Ramaswamy.
Good to see you guys. How are you? Did we talk about the pipeline?
Yes, I did. I warmed him up for you.
Good. Give this man a round of applause here. A real patriot here. He doesn't have to be doing what he's doing.
You either.
Doing it for we the people, and that's why we're in this. And I know you probably talked a little bit about the carbon capture pipeline. I just heard as I was walking in.
I just warmed him up.
Well, it's an example. It's an issue, but it's an example of what's wrong in our country. It's like your shirt, sir. We the people no longer have a government that views itself as accountable to us. It's accountable to the people who buy it, who pay for it. One of the things I've learned in my short time in politics is that These days anymore, every politician is bought and paid for. Every politician, basically, with scarce few exceptions, is dancing to the tune of their biggest donor. That's what gets you the CO2 pipeline in this state. When it doesn't advance our interests, it's based on a climate change agenda that absolutely is a hoax because it has nothing to do with the climate. It does feel a little bit odd to talk about global warming. but put that to one side. It's based on a climate change agenda that's based on false premises, using eminent domain to seize the land of innocent farmers. Why? So that a few people who control the political system can gain from the process. And one thing to know about me is there's a reason why I'm the only candidate in this race who can tell you certain things, that I am against the CO2 pipeline. It's actually what brought Steve and I together, and I was honored to earn Steve's endorsement through getting to know each other through that. But that it's based on this false premise of the climate change agenda. To tell you that I'm the only candidate who's pledged to repeal the special liability exemptions for vaccine manufacturers, where if you're injured by a vaccine, you can't sue the vaccine manufacturer, even though normal companies are absolutely liable. That's crony capitalism. I'm the only candidate who can tell you that I'll pardon every peaceful January 6th protester on my first day in office because it's the right thing to do for this country. That Ronna McDaniel, the failed chairwoman of the RNC, needs to step aside after 5 failed years of leadership. And the reason why, thank you, it's the right thing to do. How can we bring accountability to Washington, D.C. if we're not bringing accountability to our own party? And so the thing about me in this race is I'd rather speak the truth and lose this election than to win by playing some fake game of political snakes and ladders. But the bet I'm making is that that is the winning strategy. That's not up to me. That's up to you. And that's how we're running this race. We've done, I think, upwards of now 390-plus events like this between now and between the start of this and the Iowa caucus. It's more than the other campaigns combined. This is what gives me that energy. This process works this way for a reason. Iowa goes first for a reason. Every one of your voices and votes is the equivalent of 1 million people in shaping the outcome of who becomes the president. And it's done this way because there's no social media algorithms in the air between us right now. There's no TV screens between us. We in this country have this culture of fear, actually, that has spread like an epidemic. And the way we're going to get our country back is by all of us, not just me, not just Steve King, all of us starting to speak the truth in the open again. And that's what this campaign is about. I'll tell you a word about myself and my family and why we're in this. My parents came to this country 40 years ago in search of opportunity. And in a single generation, I have gone on to found multiple successful companies. I did it while marrying my wife, Apurva, who is a throat surgeon by day. She's one of the best at what she does, treating cancer survivors. But she was braving the snow in southeast Iowa today, doing her line of events. She's saving lives every day, but we're doing this together because this is about saving the life of our country. We're raising our 2 sons. One is about to be 4 years old next month. How old are you? You're 7. He's a little younger than you. And our younger one is about 1.5 years old. Raising those 2 boys in Ohio, following our faith in God. I'm worried that American dream isn't going to exist for our kids and their generation unless we step up and do something about it. And the thing that pulled me into this race is I see a Republican Party that has grown lazy, actually. I don't mean lazy in the get out the vote operation sense of lazy. I mean lazy in a deeper sense of even defining who we are and what we actually stand for. And you see, the left, they're very good at this, actually. They'll give you a vision. It's not the right vision, but they'll give you something. Race, gender, sexuality, climate. And we're sitting here criticizing that vision without offering an alternative vision of our own. What do we actually stand for? What does it mean to be a Republican in the year 2024? What does it mean to be an American in the year 2024? That's the question we need to answer. And to me, it means we believe in the ideals of 1776. 2 basic ideas of how I'm going to run this country. 2 basic ideas of this candidacy. It's not too much to ask. The first is that we, the people, create a government that is accountable to us, not the other way around. That the people who we elect to run the government ought to be the ones who actually run the government. Not the shadow government in the deep state that's running the show today. So if there's one thing I get done as your next president, one thing I'm the best suited person in this country to do, one war that I will wage and win, it isn't some pointless foreign war. It is the war on our own shadow government right here in the United States of America. You want to actually drain the swamp this time, I'm the guy to do this. And here's how we're going to make it happen. On day one when I enter office, we will start the process of firing 75% of all federal bureaucrats. That's how you drain the swamp. Get serious about it. Government agencies like the FBI, the ATF, the CDC, the U.S. Department of Education. We're not just going to reform them anymore. That doesn't work. We're going to get in there and actually shut them down. That's how you revive this republic. I'm not going to start with last year's budget as the baseline, which is based on the prior year's budget before that, which is based on the year before's budget, all of which are corrupt, and that's how you get a $34 trillion national debt problem. No, we're going to start with zero as the baseline, zero-based budgeting, and ask what's actually necessary. That's how I've run my businesses. That's how I'm going to run the federal government in the United States. If I can't work for you all for more than 8 years as your next president, which I view as a good thing, actually, neither should those federal bureaucrats who are reporting into me either. 8-year term limits for the bureaucracy instead of civil service protections. That is how you drain the swamp. Thank you. That's the first point. The people we elect to run the government ought to be the ones who actually run the government. And the second is this. Those government leaders owe a duty to the citizens of this nation, not another one. I'm not going to use your taxpayer dollars, our money, to fork over $200 billion more to Ukraine so some kleptocrat can buy a bigger house. We're done with that. That's behind us. Relegate that vision of the Republican Party to the dustbins of history. What I'm going to focus on is using our own military to protect our own borders right here. We're protecting against somebody else's invasion. We have an invasion of our own southern border. I know you're not supposed to say it that way, but if there's 3 million Chinese on the western border or 3 million Iranians on the eastern border, we'd call that what it was, an invasion. You got 8 million on our own southern border, that's an invasion into this country. And so on day one in office, as your next commander-in-chief, I will move our own troops, our own military, to our own southern border and our northern border too. That's what it means to stand for the rule of law. If I can get a waters. Could you guys give me a water real quick? I've been talking too much.
Coming your way.
Tony, this is probably our 7th or 8th event today, but this is what gives me my energy, is talking to you about exactly why we're in this. Not just closing the southern border. That's not good enough. We have to be willing to go the distance. The best border policies of all, you know what they are? End the incentives to be here illegally in the first place. No more federal funding for sanctuary cities. We're done with that. And then end birthright citizenship for the kids of illegals in this country. It doesn't apply to them. And we have to stand for the law and the Constitution in this country. And this is the hard part. Many Republicans refuse to get to this part. Thank you, Steve. Thank you. Appreciate it. For the 8 million or so who are in this country illegally already, what do we do about it? There's one answer to that question. We will return anybody who's entered this country illegally back to their country of origin, because that's what it means to stand for the rule of law in the United States of America. It's the hard thing, but we're going to do it. They say you can't do it because there's only 6,000 ICE agents, ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents. Well, read the law. There's Section 287G in the law that says you can use local law enforcement if ICE delegates their warrant service power. All you need is a president with a spine to actually see that through. Now you have 1 million local law enforcement standing by, eager and ready to get that job done. And I think that's why I'm in this race. A lot of what I say may sound familiar to you. I see you with the hat of my friend, Donald Trump. I respect the man. I've respected him more in this race than anybody else. Thank you. I appreciate that. But we all respect this country, which is why we're in this. And I think right now it's going to take a president who, yes, has sharp elbows, can break things, get things done as an executive. But it also is going to take a president who knows and deeply understands the law and the Constitution in this country. And just think about it. Those two things, they don't usually go together. Right? You have the business guy, the entrepreneur over here who can execute. You'll have the legal academic type over here who might pontificate but may not be able to actually get something done. We need both of those things in our president. Now, you know, the last president who embodied that is probably Thomas Jefferson, actually. He was an intellectual, but he also sent the Lewis and Clark expeditions and got done, made the Louisiana Purchase, got done what needed to get done in this country. He was 33 years old when he wrote that Declaration of Independence. Funny enough, he invented the swivel chair while he was at it, actually. That's Thomas Jefferson for you. There's a reason why these revolutions, these revivals, they tend to be led by the next generation for a reason. I think it's going to take somebody whose best days in life are still yet ahead to see a country whose best days are still ahead of itself as well. I don't take that for granted, but I hope they are for me. And let's have some real talk here. You guys have a choice to make on Monday. It's an important choice. And what I see playing out right now, I see it in plain sight. And for me, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And then it's painful to just watch, really a disaster play out in slow motion in front of you. The first step is to see it. The next step is to fix it. We're falling into a trap right now. The system is selling us the rope today that they will use to hang us tomorrow. And here's what's happening. I'm just going to state it as plainly as I can. They want to narrow this down to a two-horse race between Donald Trump and a puppet who they can control. That's what the system is doing. I initially wondered if it was Joe Biden. Didn't seem to make sense. They were trying to move him out of the way. I thought it was going to be Gavin Newsom. No, it's a puppet in our own party. I believe it's Nikki Haley. They're narrowing this down to a two-horse race between Donald Trump and a puppet who they can control. This spring or the early summer, eliminate Donald Trump from contention and then prop their puppet into the White House. It's hiding in plain sight. We cannot walk into that trap. Our America First agenda did not begin with Donald Trump in 2016. It began with George Washington in 1776. And we owe it to our founding fathers and to this country to make sure we have another 250 years and then some still left. What they're doing to this man is wrong. I have stood against it at every step, from the Miami courthouse to standing up to what the Biden administration is doing, to saying every Republican, including myself, will remove our names from the ballots of Maine to Colorado. Heck, earlier today, I submitted personally an amicus brief to the U.S. Supreme Court, making the legal argument for why Colorado needs to be overruled so that Donald Trump is able to remain on the ballot for a free and fair election. So I've done everything in my power that I can. But at a certain point, we have to open our eyes that these people will stop at nothing. And at this point, I really mean nothing to keep this man away from power. We love Donald Trump because he got this fight started, but now it is our job to finish it. It is my duty to finish it. That's why I'm in this race. We're in the middle of a war in this country. It's not a war between black and white. It's not even between Democrat and Republican, as I'm telling you. It's a bipartisan affair. It is a war between those of us who love the United States of America and our founding ideals, and a fringe minority who hates this country and what we stand for. And now more than ever, we need a commander-in-chief, a general, who will lead us to victory in this war. It's going to require somebody who isn't bought and paid for, somebody who knows that we're in a war. You got to know you're in a war to win one. But now more than ever, somebody with fresh legs who is not yet wounded in that war. So if you want to actually save this country, if you want to actually save Trump, the best way to do it is a vote for me on the night of the Iowa caucus on January 15th, on Monday night. It's going to be cold. They've already told you that. Well, you know what? George Washington didn't complain about the weather when he crossed the Delaware. So I'm going to tell you to do what you can for this country and weather it and do the right thing for who we are. And if you all do your part, and that's what I'm asking you for. I'm asking you for 30 minutes of your time to save this country. I'm asking for your vote at that Iowa caucus, even if it's a little different than what you thought of doing 3 weeks or 3 months ago. to do the right thing for our country, to skate to where the puck is going. Don't get a year from now, look back and ask, oh, were we shocked by what happened? Or should we have said we should have seen that coming? You got the future of America first right here. And I'm asking you to do the right thing for our country. And if you all do your part, I promise you, my wife Apurva and I and our family, we will do ours to make sure, not in some fake politician way, but in a true way, make sure that our country's best days are actually still ahead of us. Thank you for coming tonight, guys. God bless you and your families and our United States of America. I want to open this up. As I said, you have an important choice to make. Give me the hard ones. I like the SpaceX hat. We'll start with you. And then we'll go right behind you, and then we'll come to you, sir.
I wrote this on the notes.
That's allowed. If you want, we can come back to you, too.
No.
Okay, sure.
So I just want to first off by thanking you for being a role model for me and my generation.
Thank you, man.
I drove 6 hours from Indiana to show you support.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you. In this weather, too. That means a lot.
I believe in your message, and I know you'll be my next president.
Thank you.
To be honest, I'm quite afraid of showing up because you know how the climate is in terms of getting fired for your beliefs. But my question is too important to avoid this. So my question is going to be about quantum computing and AI.
Good.
I think in order to protect our national security, we should be light years ahead in front of Russia and communist China in terms of those developments. I think that it's a topic not talked about enough, and it's an issue we should consider quite seriously. I would argue that the weaponization of quantum computing and AI is far more dangerous than the nuclear bomb was. If we let communist China or Russia be the first to achieve quantum computing or AI supremacy, I think we're screwed, since these technologies, when used in their cruelest ways, have the ability to decrypt many of our encryption methods which protect our energy grids, our government communications, etc., without needing to actually set foot in the U.S., which is why it's so dangerous. So I don't want this to be another space or nuclear bomb race where we just etch by with the victory. I want this to be a landslide victory.
Yeah, I like that.
I know most likely as president you're limited, and this is more of a Congress and state issue, but I still want to know what your plans are. So the first question is, what are your plans to tackle this? And the second is some proposed solutions if you want to borrow them. So one of them is, would you agree to radically reform academia? That is to remove tenure positions to increase competitiveness, because we shouldn't be paying professors 6 figures to sit on their asses for 40 years of doing nothing.
Yeah. Couldn't have said it better myself.
And to cut the fat in the bureaucracy within university. And finally, to appoint a new head of NSF, the National Science Foundation, to divert more funds to relevant research like quantum and computer science research. Because, for example, I found a $200,000 grant used to do research on petri dishes, which is irresponsible because, I don't know about you, but $200,000 for petri dish research, I would expect it to teleport or levitate. So, those are my questions for you.
Well said, man. Thank you for being here. I appreciate the kind words and support. And I appreciate from the next generation asking a smart question that's going to affect your future. I'll tell you something. I actually asked and suggested to the Republican debate moderators and whatever, I think at the third and fourth debates both, suggested, volunteered in interviews with the media that they ask about AI. Apparently that they believe that doesn't sell for some reason because it's not in the usual partisan bickering. We got to skate to where the puck is going. Right now, first of all, let's talk about who's in charge of AI policy in the United States of America. Anybody know who that is? Kamala Harris. Our vice president is the single person been put in charge of setting AI. She's the czar of AI policy. I can think of few things more dangerous to the future of humanity than putting someone like that in charge. If you're going to have somebody in charge of AI policy, I would hope they're able to spell AI. But anyway, I'm just kidding around a little bit. The seriousness of the issue is being ignored. That's one way to know it. So there are risks with the development of AI, but I think that we can't use that to hamstring our own ability to develop that AI here. Some basic principles I'll give you. One is if we draw strict boundaries in the interface between AI-powered tools broadly and kids, at least with the warning labels, you've dealt with one set of concerns. I do not think we should adopt any kind of ban in this country that China or Russia or anybody else is not adopting either. We tried to do that with gain-of-function research. You remember that? Well, how'd that one turn out? We banned it here, did it in China, came back with a pandemic over here. So that's not the right answer. The right framework to contain the risks is apply a framework that we already use in so many other areas. Strict liability for companies for the adverse consequences of what they develop. So if you're a chemicals company, you can't go dumping your chemicals in somebody else's river. If you do, you're liable for it under the tort system. But right now, we don't apply that framework for Microsoft or Meta or OpenAI. And so they're in an arms race right now because they don't bear the risks or the liabilities. They're just in an arms race to have the first mover advantage and to stifle out competition. But if we say, no, you're going to be strictly liable that if you metaphorically dump in somebody else's river, developing an algorithm that has an unforeseen consequence, you're still strictly liable for that consequence. That at least forces the companies to take into account, to what you call internalize those risks, but without creating some centralized government regulator, which we, I think, generally prefer against in this country. And that's exactly how you advance competitiveness through the private sector, but while we actually, in a much more intelligent way than we are with the Kamala Harris AI regime right now, take advantage of the developments in AI and the opportunities while protecting against a lot of those risks. And you're right, the risks we face right now are not the risks that you might read about in the front page of the newspaper. We're more vulnerable to a super EMP attack right now than we've ever been. Just raise your hand if you've heard of the term EMP, if that means anything to you. Electromagnetic pulse attack. That could take out our electric grid in a matter of days. A good portion of this country would die in that scenario. We have 60 Chinese transformers in our own electric grid, which create a further risk. We have to harden our own electric grid to protect ourselves against those risks. Cyber attacks. Powered by the advance in AI, the increase of cybersecurity risks goes up dramatically. And yet our national security establishment has, for the longest time, actually worried about the periphery, somebody else's war somewhere halfway around the world, while our own homeland is more vulnerable than we've ever been. So that's going to change on my watch. We're going to direct our own national defense spending to defend our own homeland. You brought up the NSF. Not a lot of people know this. I mean, one of the recent statutes passed in the NSF has more concern not for how the money is being spent or what the yield is out of it, but for the racial and gender composition of the people who get the grants. How about the best person gets the job? How about the smartest and most capable person is actually doing what's best for this country? I don't think China's worrying about the race or gender of who's actually making their scientific discoveries. Why in the heck are we in this country? You know, actually, they're worried. Actually, are you Asian American? They're worried too many Asian Americans are actually getting those grants. Why do they? Because they're worried that there aren't too many Asian Americans in the NBA. Nobody wants to watch the NBA if you're going to use, racial and gender quota systems in the NBA. I think that it's no different when it comes to science and math. Pick the best person for the job, regardless of skin color or gender. That's also part of how we need to remain competitive. End affirmative action. There's an executive order passed by Lyndon Johnson. Every Republican since then could have rescinded it. They were all scared to do it because it's a touchy subject. I'll rescind it. It says if you're getting federal money or if you're doing business with the federal government, you have to adopt these toxic racial and gender quota systems. I'll end it. Restore merit in this country. The idea that you get ahead in the United States, not on the color of your skin, but on the content of your character and your contributions. May the best person get the job, get to merit in this country. And that's what we're going to bring back. We'll go right there.
As a pro-life president, what would you do to advance the culture of life? And then second, what would you do to encourage people women especially, who are pro-choice to vote for you?
Sure. And those two things are both important, actually. So as president, first of all, our own taxpayer money is right now going to fund organizations like Planned Parenthood, whether we like it or not. That goes to an end. When I say zero-based budgeting, I say we're going to start with zero as the baseline and ask what's actually necessary. No, the funding of Planned Parenthood is not necessary. So that's an easy basis, end all federal funding there. I stand for this movement at the state level, like in states like Iowa, to protect life, to do it in a way that's driven by the states. I believe in the Constitution. Roe versus Wade was correctly decided. Roe versus Wade was incorrectly decided. Dobbs was correctly decided to overturn Roe versus Wade, to return this to the people. But that means we have to respect, if we federalize this issue, then more unborn children are going to die in the next 30 years because they're going to codify Roe versus Wade into law. So I think this needs to be driven by the states. I do favor as expansive of a limitation on abortion as we can ever get to. Iowa got to 6 weeks. I think that was an accomplishment. I was here at the state legislature the day it happened to celebrate it. But I think the way we're going to win on this issue is not by backing off on our principles. It's by actually doing a better job of standing up for life. And I'll tell you what I mean. I think we need to do a better job as a pro-life movement standing for crisis pregnancy care, standing for access to adoption, child care. And then I say this, and I'm still the only person who's advancing this in our party, but I think it's a real winner. When I talk to people who are pro-choice, even independents or centrists, or even some Democrats, we're able to take this issue at least off the table as a showstopper when I tell them this, and I do favor this. I think we need to codify more sexual responsibility for men into the law, and I'll tell you how. We live in an era of genetic paternity tests. So right now the left will say there's a women's rights issue. Well, here's what I would say. Yes, it's true. Women are the only ones who can bear children, despite what some on the left now tend to believe. But there's a difference here. But we can share the burden as evenly as we can. If the woman brings the child to term, she can, at her option, make the man financially responsible not only for that child, but for her as well. That actually forces men then to take responsibility for their sexual decisions on the front end, so we can say we're all in this together. Now it's not about men versus women, men's rights versus women's rights. It's about human rights, actually. I think that's a winner for us. And so that is how, to answer your second question, how I'll convince people who maybe think they're on the other side of us on this, to then be able to open their minds. And then what I'll say is, okay, what do you think about the case that Clarence Thomas brought up at the Dobbs case, which was the case of a woman who was pregnant and assaulted, and her unborn child died as a result? Do you think that lawbreaker shouldn't be punished for that death? I haven't met a person in this country who believes that. So that says we share the same pro-life instincts in common, but it's this illusion of the women's rights versus men's rights debate that our side has fallen into. And I think if we're able to say we're all in this together, that's how we win electorally on this issue. And that tells you something about the way I approach the presidency more generally, not just on that issue, but on countless others. I deeply and badly want to unite this country, but I am not going to do it by compromising on our principles. I'm going to do it by being uncompromising about the principles that actually unite all of us. And just go to the Constitution, the First Amendment, the idea that you get to speak your mind openly as long as I get to in return. That's a radical idea. It's not a moderate idea, right? The idea that we, the people, settle our differences in a constitutional republic at the ballot box, as opposed to people in the back of palace halls in old world Europe, or a 3-letter government agency building, or the corner office of BlackRock on Park Avenue in Manhattan. That's a radical idea. But that's what makes America great. That's what makes America itself. And so I think the way we're going to unite this country isn't through showing up at the 50-yard line, holding hands and singing Kumbaya and compromising. No. The way I will unite this country is by embracing the radicalism, dare I say the extremism, of the American ideals themselves. And we've been taught for a generation now to celebrate our diversity and our differences so much that we forgot all of the ways that we are the same as Americans. Our diversity is not our strength. Our strength is what unites us across that diversity. Without that, just think about it. What are we? We're a bunch of different looking two-legged higher mammals with a bunch of different shades of melanin, right? Walking some geographic space that we call a country, doing what our iPhones tell us to do on a given day. I mean, that's really what America looks like to me at some time. But there's more to this life than the aimless passage of time. This country is a nation built on ideals. The essence of what makes us human beings, different from animals, is that we can believe in something bigger than ourselves. That we have the power to pledge allegiance to a flag. You don't pledge allegiance to that flag, you're going to pledge allegiance to another one instead. That's quite literally where the transgender flag comes from. I think it's quite literally why many people have more Ukrainian flags in their front yards than they do have American flags, or more transgender flags in Washington, D.C. in the month of June than the American flag. We've lost our sense of purpose and meaning in this country when faith, family, patriotism, hard work these things have disappeared, that leaves a moral vacuum in our heart, and that's when the poison fills the void. Wokeism, transgenderism, climatism, COVIDism, depression, anxiety, fentanyl, suicide. These are symptoms of a deeper void of purpose and meaning in our country. And I think half the job of the next U.S. president is policy. And I've gone deep. Shutting down the deep state, I can deliver that. Securing the border, I can deliver that. Restraining our overreaching, overwrought foreign policy to instead protect our homeland, I can do that. But that's only half the job. The other half of the job of our next president is to revive our national character, actually, to answer who we really are. And I think the last president to do that was actually Reagan. When he left office in January of 1989, of all the things he could have picked that the man accomplished, bringing us to the near end of the Cold War, growing this economy, none of that. The thing he said in 1989 that he was most proud of was reviving a national character that we lacked when I first took office in 81. That's what he said. I think a lot about what I want to say when we leave that office in January of 2033, after 2 terms. What do I want to tell you that we actually did? I'll tell you we shut down the deep state. I'll tell you that we secured this border, that we grew this economy, stayed out of World War III, declared independence from China. I'm confident we'll tell you those things. But the thing I most want to tell you is that our 2 sons and their generation, that they are once again proud to be citizens of this nation. And I hope that when I leave office in January of 2033, that too will be the accomplishment that I'm most proud of. So thank you for that question. It gets to the heart of how I'm going to lead this country. Thank you. This may be the last question, I'm being told.
You just touched on a little bit, but I was wondering about your foreign policy in regard to Israel and Ukraine.
Sure. Broadly, my foreign policy is, I'll give it to you in a punchline. Stay out of World War III. Declare economic independence from China. We can't depend on them from our pharmaceuticals. 95% of our pharmaceuticals come from China. That doesn't make sense. The same country that had a man-made pandemic that they unleashed onto the world as a man-made virus. The same country that's lacing our illegal pharmaceutical supply chain with fentanyl from southern border of Mexico. What do you think they're going to do when we're in a conflict scenario with our legal pharmaceutical supply chain? Actually, we depend on China for our F-35 jets. Most of our military equipment is actually made in China. At least depends on the supply chain that comes from China. So anyway, avoid World War III, declare economic independence from China, and then use our own national defense spending to defend our own homeland. Border incursions, cyber attacks, super EMP attacks, missile defenses. Speaking of Israel, if that can happen on October 7th in Israel, you better believe that could happen right here at home in the United States of America. And if I'm doing my job as your next president, I'm here to make sure it doesn't by sealing those borders and deporting anybody who entered this country illegally. So that's my foreign policy in a nutshell. Specifically on Ukraine, I would end the war on reasonable terms that require Russia to exit its military alliance with China. The Russia-China military alliance is the single greatest threat we face. And together each nation is stronger. Nobody's talking about it. By arming Ukraine, it's not just our money that we're wasting, I believe. But even worse, we're driving Russia further into China's hands, which leaves us in a more dangerous position and increases the risk of World War III. I would go the other direction. Reasonable deal in Ukraine. We won't admit Ukraine to NATO. In return, Russia exits its military alliance with China. A reasonable deal that allows Ukraine to come out with its sovereignty intact, reasonable territorial negotiations in the East. But that reduces the risk of World War III, and that's how it would end the Ukraine war diplomatically. I'd do it pretty quickly, and I think this is a deal Putin would do. It's a deal that we should absolutely want to do, and it's a deal that actually leaves China worse off. People say, well, won't that encourage China to go after Taiwan? It's the opposite. China's bet right now is that the U.S. won't want to go to war with 2 different allied nuclear superpowers at the same time. If Russia's no longer in China's camp, then Xi Jinping is going to have to think twice before going after Taiwan. So that's on Ukraine. On Israel, Israel is our most important ally. Israel's not, certainly in the Middle East, is not in the same category for me as Ukraine, but America First is my North Star. So how do we do this? Give Israel the diplomatic support that it needs. What I call a diplomatic Iron Dome, the right to its national self-defense. What Hamas did was immoral, it was wrong, it was subhuman, it was medieval. What I would tell Israel is that you have the absolute right to defend yourself, and we stand for your absolute right to defend yourself without the U.S. or the UN or the EU getting in your way. Without us getting involved militarily in any way in this war either. That is better for Israel and better for the United States. Because if we're involved, half in, half out, $16 billion check here to fund this war, then we have to take some responsibility for what they do, which requires us to ask questions about their war objectives, which gives Israel a nice backseat driver and an armchair quarterback, which doesn't help them. The thing that's actually constraining them now is the UN and the EU and even much of the Biden administration constraining what they can and cannot do to defend their own border. So now, and so when I first adopted this stance, 3 months ago, in mid-October, people questioned this and said, oh, well, you would oppose the $16 billion aid package? Isn't that anti-Israel? No. It's actually the most pro-Israel, principal pro-Israel position because it's a pro-America position. And the strongest pro-Israel voices in Israel are now saying the same thing that I'm saying. Because Biden's now using the lording over a small check to be able to armchair quarterback what we're doing, and that's where we create a lot of ambiguity by muddying the waters. Israel's now demonstrated it absolutely has the ability to get its own job done. It's not militarily constrained. It's diplomatically constrained. And so now that position, I think, if I may say so, I'm not saying this to boast or anything, in both of those instances, actually, both in Ukraine, when I was the first first presidential candidate to say I would end this war on diplomatic terms, and on this Israel question, first, my position was roundly derided by the Republican establishment and the mainstream media. The corporate media, frankly, across the board, not just left-wing corporate media, all corporate media. Now they're coming around to that position in both of those instances. And that tells us something. Foreign policy experience is not the same as foreign policy wisdom. The same people who led us to 2 wars in Iraq and Afghanistan that didn't advance the American interest. For God's sake, the Taliban is still in charge 20 years later. Iraq is a more broken country than when we showed up. They added $7 trillion to our national debt, and we sent tens of thousands of our sons and daughters to go die in those wars. I refuse to repeat those same mistakes. Don't put the same people in charge of it all over again. It's going to take somebody from the next generation who is a businessman, who understands in depth. I do believe that I know more about the specifics of each of these conflicts than everybody else running for U.S. president, which may be too low of a bar, but it's at least the bar we have right now. And I'm not saying this disparagingly. I don't know if you all have watched the debates, but some of the people who want to fight for provinces in eastern Ukraine have no idea what provinces they're even fighting for. I do think it's a bit of an intellectual fraud in our foreign policy establishment for the last 25 years. And I do think it's going to take a fresh leader who's able to question all the assumptions baked in there to say, I'm going to put the interests of Americans here in our homeland first. That's better for us and better for our allies and better for the free world, because what hope does the rest of the world have if the shining city on a hill no longer still shines? And if we lead the country in this way, shut down the deep state at home, actually prioritize American interests with a spine without apologizing for it, then we don't have to be this nation in decline anymore. We don't have to be at the end of the ancient Roman Empire. I think what George Washington would say if he were with us right now is that our nation is still really just a little young, actually. Going through our own version of our adolescence. Figuring out who we're going to be when we grow up. And when you view it that way, it makes sense again, actually. You go through your adolescence, you go through that identity crisis. You do some stupid things. But we are stronger for it when we get to our adulthood on the other side. So no, I don't think we have to be that nation in decline. I think we still can be a nation in our ascent. I'm not going to be the guy who walks in here and tells you that it's morning in America, because it's not. But it can be. I'm not going to tell you the American dream is alive and well. I can't look the next generation in the eye and tell you that. It is alive and hanging on for life support. But it can be. And I'm asking you all to do your part to make it so. A guy like me isn't supposed to do this. The system isn't made for it. Outsider coming in from the next generation with views that actually tell the current chairwoman of the RNC to step aside. So, yeah, they don't really do a lot of favors for me in return. I promise you that. But that's okay. I don't report to them. I report to you, the people of this country. That's the way we view this. We're not doing this for us. This country has given us more than my parents could have ever imagined when they came here, more than I could have imagined. When we're in middle school, my dad's facing layoffs at the GE plant in Evendale, Ohio, going to night school to keep our family's economic security. Do you think I would ever imagine founding multi-billion-dollar companies, self-financing a presidential campaign at the age of 38? We're not doing this for us. We're doing this because we care about passing that same country onto our kids and their generation. And so, yes, if you all do your part, Apurva and I, we will do ours to make sure we recreate that country where we will look our kids in the eye and mean it when we tell them, you get ahead in this country with your own hard work, your own commitment, your own dedication. And that you know what? You are free to speak your minds at every step of the way. That is the American dream. That is what we are running to. And with your help on Monday night, that is what we will revive to save this great country. Thank you for coming tonight, guys. God bless you and your families. And may God bless our United States of America. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, man.
Ladies and gentlemen,
good to see you again.
we would love to have you fill out
Yeah,
a
I've been in
contact
Alice.
card with
Yeah,
our
good now.
team.
My wife
If
came with
you
me
are
tonight.
ready
Can we
to
get a
save
picture?
Yeah,
this
let's get a picture.
nation, to
Thank you.
revive it, like Vivek just said, make sure and talk with Liliana or Charles or Colin, and we will help make sure
take a
you
selfie.
have all the information you need to caucus on Monday night. Additionally, if you want to be a precinct committee person, meaning that you would stand up at your
You bet.
local
Thank you.
Thank you.
precinct
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
and
I appreciate it.
share Vivek's message with
What's your name?
others at your
Michelle.
local
Michelle,
caucus.
thank you for coming.
There's a box on the card that
appreciate your
says
support on
become a
Monday.
precinct captain.
Thank you.
Just
What's your
check
name?
that box and we will reach out to you to help
Thank you
make
for
sure
coming
you can
tonight.
share
Being
the
such a
message with others
patient
at your local
young
caucus.
woman. I'm proud of you.
Thank you,
for that.
thank you, and
Thank
God
you.
bless
Thank you.
America.
I appreciate it, guys. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for coming.
I appreciate you being here. Thank you, guys. Thank you for having us. What's that? With? Okay, got it.
I spoke to you in Waterloo.
Oh, good to see you again, man. Thank you. Good to be back.
That small business I was going to run was chemical application on
Okay.
farmland. Please eliminate the EPA for me.
Oh, the EPA. So the ones I promised I can eliminate without Congress. That one I needed Congress for. But I can give a 75% headcount reduction and eliminate almost all of their regulations. Great case was West Virginia versus EPA.
Yep.
Last year. Most important Supreme Court case of our lifetime. Most of those EPA regs are unconstitutional, and I'm going to rescind those regs. So we can basically eliminate it without eliminating it, even without Congress. And we've got trust me, we got the plan for it.
You got my vote,
Yeah,
man.
thank you, man.
Down
I
on you.
appreciate it. Spread that message, brother.
Take care.
Nice to meet you.
Good to meet you. What's your name?
Bernice Neiman.
Bernice, thank you. Have you done the caucus before?
No, I have not.
Well, we would love to have you this time. Take the time on Monday, guys. I appreciate it.
You got our vote.
Thank you. Thank you. Spread that message on and come out on Monday. Bring your driver's
like
license.
guitar.
That's all you know, and a piece of where you live. Come on out and
Good luck to you.
thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate it, guys. Thank you. And you have kids?
Three daughters.
We're doing it for the next generation. So tell them we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you, man. I appreciate it. What's your name?
Dennis.
Dennis.
My cousin Bob over there is one kind of set
Oh,
this
nice.
up.
Thank you, brother.
So, and I really didn't know about your message.
Thank you, man.
You definitely have my vote.
I appreciate it, man. That
Heck
means
yeah.
a lot.
Do you mind if I
Makes a
steal
big difference.
picture
Let's
with
get
you?
one. Let's get one.
Yeah, thanks, sir.
There you go.
I appreciate that, brother.
Sweet.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
You got
What's
my
your
vote
name?
too. Rebecca.
Rebecca, thank
Yep.
you.
Thank
Brave the cold on Monday.
Yeah, yep,
I appreciate
absolutely.
it, guys. Thank you. It's
My
good to
daughter
see.
saw you in Dubuque.
Oh, is that right? She was there today. Tell her. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. We had a good time, and it was a great event. Thank you, man. Thank you for
sir.
bringing him, too.
Mind if I get a picture with
Yeah,
you?
let's get a picture. Absolutely. Get a picture?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank
Get
you.
her in there, huh?
Sorry, or sir.
All right, let me
Thank
have
you, my
one
man.
then.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I'd love your vote on Monday. It means a lot to me.
Well, you brought some stuff in to think about. for
Thank
sure.
you. Yeah, just
So,
don't
but
fall
like
into
I
the
said,
trap.
I appreciate both of you.
I know, and so do I. I respectfully, we
sir.
cannot fall into the trap. That's what I will say. They've laid one for us.
They've laid
They
it out
have.
pretty clear.
And so don't look back a year from now and regret what we did.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes,
that's
sir.
all I ask
Thank
you to
my
think
friend.
about. Thank you.
Have a good day.
I appreciate it. You too.
Evening.
I'm just going to leave my hat on.
I got it.
Thank
Did
you.
you?
Thank you so much.
sir.
Hey, man, thank you. Where do you live, man?
I live in Chicago.
Thank you for being
I'm
here,
on a
brother.
road trip and I was like, I gotta come
I
out and say
appreciate that,
thank you.
brother. Thank you. We do a quick selfie. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it.
I'm looking forward
Thank you, man.
to seeing what Ramaswamy derangement syndrome looks like.
Oh, okay. You're seeing the beginnings of it with some of these people, but
It's okay.
thank you. I appreciate
I've
it.
been praying for your safety.
We appreciate that.
I
We
want
need
you
it.
to make
It's the ultimate
I want
protection.
your family to be safe.
Thank you. Appreciate your vote on the caucus.
Bye. Thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Hey, guys, thank you. Thank you for having us, guys. Thank you for being here, guys. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate you being here, guys.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank
so
you very
much.
much.
Yeah.
I appreciate you guys. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you,
Thank you
guys.
so much. Thank you for coming.
All the best, guys. Thank you. I love your support at the caucus on Monday.
If you
Yep.
don't get the nomination this year, you're going to run again in 4 years?
I mean, anything works for me. I don't think it works for our country. I don't think we have that much time left.
Will you stay in politics?
I'm in this for the country. My whole next phase of my life. I mean, this country's given us a lot. We're in this for doing what's right for the country. I do not think we're working with the luxury of time to ask ourselves those questions. I think saving this country has to be now. And if not, there's a high risk there's not going to be a country left. But for me, you have my word that I'm in this for the country. I'm going to ask for your vote on Monday night. I worry they're leading us into a trap. Do not fall for that trap. They're selling us that rope. They're going to use it to hang us tomorrow. See where the puck is going. You got the future of the America First agenda. Let's not drop the ball. And if you guys do your part, I'm going to do mine. I'm asking for your vote. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Kurt
I
Olson,
appreciate
pleased to meet
it.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Kurt,
Thank
it's
you
nice
for
to
what
meet
you're doing.
Thank you.
It's
Thank
an
you. I'm
honor
glad
to
to be
listen
here.
to you tonight.
Thank you. It's an
Yeah.
honor to have been here, and we're going to do our part. I'm going to ask for your vote at the caucus.
Oh, yeah, no
Thank
doubt.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I
So-
appreciate it. Thanks again,
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. I just want to say hello to these folks here. Just want to say thank you before we left. Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you. Love to ask for your support at the caucus. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
2 questions.
Okay. Hey, how you doing? Yep. Let's do it. Hey, thank you, man. Thank you for coming out. I appreciate you braving the cold and the drive over here. Proud of you. How you doing, man? Oh, changing it up here.
Hey, right? We always
Yeah,
come
you
out
had me do a double take with
This
you in the
good
back.
stuff. You're like, wait a second.
Yes,
how do I
exactly.
place that
I
guy?
did exactly.
You're like, wait a second.
Yeah.
All right.
Sometimes I wake up and I'm like, where am I? But you know.
Exactly. Hey, do we mind enlisting you right here to just get the 2-shot for
Okay.
us?
Yes.
There you go. Perfect. Awesome. All right, we good to go?
Yes.
I'm going to turn on my microphone.
Okay.
How about that?
Thank you.
Okay. We good, guys? Okay. Vivek, what does a good night look for you? Sorry. Vivek, what does a win or a really good night look like for you on Monday?
Shatter the expectations that have been set for us by the mainstream media and what I believe are really artificial polls that have been manufactured. So in many ways, the mainstream media has done us a great favor by setting those expectations where they are. We're going to shatter those expectations. That gives us the momentum needed to go into New Hampshire. Keep in mind, the person who wins the Iowa caucus has not been the person who's gone on to become the president. It's been the person who exceeds expectations here. And I think that will be me on the night of the caucus on Monday. And we're looking forward to being in New Hampshire the next day right after that.
You said here, and you've been saying before, you feel like there's a setup in
Yes.
the works right now. What are you saying here?
I think there's a setup right now, absolutely. The system has basically made a decision. They don't want Donald Trump to come anywhere near that White House. They want to narrow this down to a 2-horse race between Trump and I believe it's Haley as the puppet, a puppet who they can control. Trot that puppet into the White House after they eliminate Trump from competition. That's exactly what's going on. They're trying to eliminate Trump any way they can and trot in a puppet who they can control. I'm here to make sure not only does that not happen, but that we have an America First leader who can actually take our movement to the next level. And that's why I'm going to be in this race to the very end, and I believe successfully not only as our nominee, but as our next president.
Do you feel like with a message like that is a bit conspiratorial? You know, you've come a long way in this race.
Yeah.
Do you wonder if you might be narrowing your appeal too much at this point?
I don't think it's conspiratorial. When you have a reality that is, by every means necessary, taking one man off of ballots, even without a judicial process, for prosecutions, every method that they're taking, the reality is that's actually unprecedented in American history. We
I
can't.
guess on the Haley side of it. Why her? Why do you think she's being...
Well, I was actually just going to go with some hard facts. The very people who are paying for those very lawsuits to keep Trump off the ballot, look at who they're supporting. $250,000 checks to super PACs supporting Nikki Haley. So I'm responsive to facts, Adam, and I think that we have to open our eyes to those facts that are staring us in the face. Trump's being kept off the ballot. The very people who are keeping Trump off the ballot are the ones propping up Nikki Haley. And Nikki Haley, unlike me, refuses to say that she wouldn't step off of Maine or Colorado. That's how we actually protect ourselves against election interference in the GOP primary. So I'm stating exactly just a statement of what those hard facts are. And I think it's important for this country that we not have a president, whether a Democrat or a Republican, who says they want to require any user of the internet and social media to tie their government-issued voter ID to their profile. New Hampshire's the live free or die state. Do you think this would make Patrick Henry proud? Do you think the live free or die state actually is comprised of people who says, I want government censorship in my life, that I want to have to submit my ID in order to be able to use the internet so the government's able to monitor every tweet or post that I like? That's Orwellian. That's not the United States of America. And it's wrong if Biden stands for it, or Jack Smith stands for it, or Dick Cheney stands for it, or Nikki Haley stands for it. And I am worried we're marching straight back to that old Dick Cheney vision of the Republican Party that needs to be relegated to the dustbins of history. I'm leading us forward to a future where we serve our citizens in this country in an era of American prosperity and growth that we have not seen in a very long time in this country. And I do believe with that right kind of leader, Adam, yes, we live in a complicated present, and it's ugly what we see. But I do not think it has to stay that way. I think we still can be a nation in our ascent. And I believe it's going to take a leader from the next generation to reach and lead that new generation, to revive that American dream, that you do get ahead in this country with your own hard work and your own commitment and your own dedication, that you are free to speak your mind or use the internet or live your life at every step of the way without the government getting in your way. I think I'm the only candidate in this race who stands for those principles, stands for free speech without incursions on the First Amendment. And I think that that's what New Hampshire, I hope, is going to go for right after we do well here at the Iowa caucus.
Last question for you. When we last saw you in New Hampshire, it was under some difficult circumstances, a threat against your life. Does that change anything for you? I know you've got security here. Did it change your outlook at all?
Well, look, we're in this and guided by our purpose. I'm guided by my faith. I'm grateful to the team we have around me. I'm grateful for local law enforcement in New Hampshire who is involved in handling that situation as well. I pray for the safety of everyone through this process. And ultimately, it should be we the people who decide who leads this country forward. And I'm so grateful to the teams that protect us and local law enforcement, whose back we actually have to have. I have the back of local law enforcement if I'm the next president, to make sure every police officer, especially local police, are able to do their job without looking over their shoulder for fear of being sued. And that's part of that culture of the rule of law that we need to stand for in this country as well.
All right, we'll see you in New Hampshire.
Thank you, Adam. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Vivek.
Thank you.
Thanks for your
Thank you.
time.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate
be
it.
well.